Rich, thank you for doing this.
What's happening, man?
I have to tell you how much I love you. Without you, most of the people watching this probably wouldn't even know who I was.
That's not true, man.
It
Come
is.
on.
Yeah. If you hadn't had me on the first time, my life really changed. The first time I did the show, you introduced me to Bird, who's ended up getting my book published, Simon & Schuster, coming out at the beginning of the year. So it all started with this, with the invite to be on the show. So thank you before we start.
You're welcome, but thank you, because I think for me, I've been doing this thing for a long time. It's coming up on 13 years now. And people often ask me, like, who's your favorite guest? Or, like, what are the memorable moments? And it's very difficult for me to, like, select this person over that person. But I think when I think about, like, the most meaningful moments or aspects of this thing that I do, like, I always think about the guests that I have on and the impact that it has, not just on the audience, but on the guest, And so my favorite moments, the most meaningful moments, are when I have the privilege of, like, introducing somebody to a wider audience, and then I get to see that the audience embrace that person, and then I get to see what that guest does with that, and the ways in which it impacts their life, and to see you kind of, like, have that experience. And then now, being on the precipice of, putting this book into the world and all of that, like, it's cool. Like, this is why I do it. This is a big reason why I do it. So that's why I say thank you, because this is, it nourishes me to know that.
Well, your humility, I think, is why you have such a wide and big audience. And I'm not surprised that you would say that. But thank you again. We were talking before we started about the whole purpose of the show here. And I for me, the reason I wanted to do this and the reason I wanted to talk to you is because for people who are going through hard times, at least for myself, for my own personal story, when you're going through a hard time, it's hard to imagine what it looks like on the other side, because you're just at times in such a deep, dark hole. And even when knowing your story myself, when I look at you, I'm always like, man, Rich really has it together. He's such an intellect. He has interesting guests, interesting conversations. And unless someone's read your book or done the research to understand your kind of origin story, it's almost hard for me at times to remember, like, where you came from and the difficulties you've had to overcome. So if you don't mind, I'd like to start by talking about, like, how bad it was starting out with the drinking. And for people who might be going through this, I think that what I'm hoping is that they'll see, like, at least with me, I'm like, man, if that guy can get out of that hole, I can too. So let's talk about the low points of your drinking.
Sure. Yeah, my life at the end of my drinking career was an absolute shit show. It was very bleak and dark. But also, I often say, like, my drunk-a-log, like, isn't that dramatic. Like, it's kind of pedestrian, what happened to me. Especially, you just shared with me this insane story of another guest that you interviewed for the show. And, my story doesn't measure up to that at all in terms of, like, the drama and the stakes. Because I was raised in, an upwardly mobile family, and my needs were met. And so I'm always like conscious of the fact that the suffering that I experienced was always within the context of some degree of privilege. You know what I mean? And I want to point that out up front. Like, I'm very aware of that. But that doesn't mean that the emotional state that I experienced where I was any less than what it's like for anybody else who's in the throes of alcoholism or substance addiction, because it was really bad. Like many other alcoholics, like, my drinking career began very innocently, and realizing, like, the first time I took a drink, like, how much better I felt and how much more confident and just self-assured it immediately, made me. And what I often say is that it was like, I was like this kid walking around thinking everyone else had this rule book for life, and I was just bewildered and confused, and I really didn't know how to connect with other people. And the minute I got a couple beers in me, it just felt like, oh, I have it sorted out. Like, this is what I think everyone else feels like all the time, And so it worked for me. And the early years of my drinking, like I would be lying if I didn't say I had a lot of fun. Like it taught me how to be a social animal and somebody who could like go to a party and talk to a girl and crack a joke and all of those things that just felt impossible to me, right? But it didn't take long before it turned on me, and it began slowly by eroding like my relationship to my goals, and things that I aspired for myself just became secondary to always being obsessed with where the next good time was going to be. And it took me to some really dangerous and bleak places, but to just sort of paint the picture of what it was like at the end, I was living in Los Angeles. I still somehow was holding on to a job as a lawyer at a law firm, but I was going to get fired soon. Like I was just I was completely unreliable in every way, and I had no relationship with telling the truth at all. I had a marriage that went sideways on me. Like I had gotten married, but that marriage ended on the honeymoon when I sent my this person who was supposed to be my wife home. It's like there's lots of like weird. It would take hours to like contextualize all of that, but I was basically sleeping on a bare mattress in an essentially unfurnished apartment in Venice, and had no friends of any significance at that time. They had all abandoned me, and I was hanging out either with myself or with lower companions. My parents and my family had completely detached from me. They had had enough. And, they said, listen, when you're ready to like do something about this, we're available. But until then, like, we just cannot stand by and like watch you destroy yourself in this way.
And how hard was that when your parents were basically?
That was heavy. And I think that played into, ultimately my decision to get sober. Like, this, this thing that I took for granted was no longer available to me. And I knew that they loved me, and I knew that they were in a tremendous amount of pain. But I was powerless to stop doing what I was doing. And I think for people who, are unfamiliar with the disease of alcoholism or don't have somebody in their life that suffers from this, they think like, can't you see what's going on? Like, just fix it. Just stop doing this. Right. And what they miss is that, like, of course I knew I was an alcoholic. I'd known I was an alcoholic for a long time. That didn't mean that I was ready to do anything about it. So here I am in this apartment, and I was a daily drinker at this point. Like, I would wake up so hungover that the only rational thing to do was to have a vodka tonic in the shower, because otherwise, like, I was just nauseous, and I wasn't able to sleep. I was having bed sweats and spinning and hallucinations and all of that. But like one stiff drink in the shower in the morning, and it was like, oh, I feel like a normal person now. And that was followed by a tall boy between my legs as I drove to Century City for my job. And then in this office building, sneaking out to, go find a bar and drink during the day, and just biding my time until it was reasonable. It was a reasonable hour for me to leave and then go do what I'd been thinking about all day, was just to go home and get as drunk as possible. And then who knows what was going to happen. Like, for me, that was the appeal. Like not like on one level, it's like, alcohol is very reliable. It's always going to deliver this experience, that my body craved and my mind would obsess about. But there was also this question mark, like the chaos of the unknown. Like, what I like to do is start drinking so much, and then I would go on some kind of autopilot, and then I would end up in some strange circumstance somewhere with strange people that I didn't know. And, cars would get lost or crash, and cops would get involved. And sometimes I'd end up in bed with somebody, but I would always wake up not knowing what had happened the night before, or where I had been, let alone like where my car was or anything like that. And I think there was something about that appealed to me. Like, anything could happen, and all kinds of stuff did. Right. And it was all kind of like coming to a screeching halt, because a lot of this, I was fairly new to Los Angeles, and I was used to like driving drunk in all the places that I'd lived and getting away with it. I'd gotten away with it so many times. I've been pulled over and let go, or snuck away, or just figured out like strategies to drive my car drunk. Like, it's so humiliating to admit. But in LA, you're not getting away with that. Like, they're going to sniff you out quick. And so I got 2 DUIs in a period of like 6 weeks. And the LAPD don't fuck around. When they pull you over, it's not like, oh, here's a fresh-faced kid, let's be nice to him. It's like they're assuming that you're a gangbanger, that you got a shotgun, in between the seats, and that there's, there's a brick of heroin somewhere in the car, and that you've got your hand on a gun, and like you're ready to, do some business, and they treat you accordingly. So I ended up, going to jail overnight both times. But when you get 2 DUIs in rapid succession like that, like they're taking your license away and you are going to jail. Like you are not getting out of that at all.
Focus isn't just about grinding harder, it's about fueling smarter. When I'm working, training, or recording, I need my brain to show up. That's why I use Ketone IQ. It's clean brain fuel. No caffeine, no crash, just steady mental energy that lasts. It gives your brain what it actually wants. Ketones. They cross the blood-brain barrier to power your neurons directly. No jitters, no drop-off. You just stay locked in longer. For me, it's the difference between pushing through and feeling dialed in. Whether I'm deep in work, on a long run, or traveling, Ketone IQ keeps me sharp, calm, and focused. If you want to think clearer and last longer, head to ketone.com/rideout for 30% off your subscription order, plus a free gift with your second shipment. Fuel your mind like you mean it. It's hard for me, and I'm sure some of your audience, to look at you and think of you in this position, because I just don't know that part of you. Like, I know the stories, but the Rich Roll I know, the thought of having an aggressive encounter with the police or being in jail is so, it's like my mind almost can't comprehend it. I just don't see anything like that happening to you.
So the first instance, it was like 3 a.m. I'd left a bar on Melrose, and I rear-ended an old woman at a stoplight at the intersection of Crescent Heights and Melrose. Police arrived, accident, like the whole thing. I'm handcuffed to this bus stop bench, like that's right on the corner. So every time I drive by that, I look at that and I'm like, that's the bench. Like I'm like so connected to that evening, and I blew a .29. Like that's my BA was so high. And then I'm like, all right, but everyone gets a DUI, right? That was my first one, like no big deal. 6 weeks later, second one, I blow a .27, driving the wrong way down a one-way street in Beverly Hills at like 3:30 in the morning. But in this case, the arresting officer takes my wallet. He's looking through my shit, right? He pulls out my business card. Not only does he know where I work, my boss is his lawyer. Like the attorney that I was working for the most, a guy called Skip Miller, was representing the LAPD in all these excessive force cases that were going on at that time in the mid-90s. And so he called my boss and he's like, I picked up one of your boys. And so on Monday morning, when I went back to work after having spent, the night in jail on Saturday night or whatever, and like having a day to like clear my head before I had to go back to work, thinking no one's the wiser, my boss calls me into his office and he's like, got an interesting phone call over the weekend, and I was like, I couldn't believe that this had happened. And I was like, that's it, like I'm getting fired. This is the end of my, lawyer career or whatever. And to his credit, he's like, listen, man, I don't, something's going on in your personal life. It's not my business. I don't even really want to know, but you're in big trouble. You got to solve it, because I was second chairing a trial with him. We were getting ready for a trial on this big case, and I was second chair. Like he needed me in order to, like go to trial in this case. And so he's like, I want you to call this guy. And he gives me a business card. And it was a business card for, Jerry Chaliff, who at the time was one of the biggest criminal defense lawyers in Los Angeles. Like he was the original lawyer for the Menendez twins. It's like, and he was also involved early on in the OJ stuff. And Robert Shapiro was a lawyer in my law firm also. Like I used to work for, I worked for Robert Shapiro. I worked on stuff with him.
And by the way, when you're a lawyer who represents the LAPD in the 90s for extreme, aggressiveness, like he must have been busy. Cause like I've heard stories about LAPD internal.
He represented LAPD and Beverly Hills PD. So he was involved in all those excessive force cases back then. Yeah. So I go see this guy, Jerry Chaliff, who I couldn't afford. I didn't have enough money to pay him. Like I was going to have to figure out how to pay this guy. And my first meeting with him, he sits me down and he's like, 2 things. I go, what? He goes, first thing, you're a criminal. Nobody had ever said that to me before. I'm Mr. Like, I went to Stanford and Cornell Law School. This guy knew what he was doing, right? I'm like, don't you know who I think I am? He goes, you're a criminal. And he goes, basically he said, like, I'm a good criminal defense lawyer, but like, he's like, I'm not a miracle worker. Like, you're going to jail. I was like, I can't go to jail.
When he tells you you're going to jail, like, what are your thoughts?
Completely freaking out.
Are you actually thinking about, I'm going to be in jail fighting?
I can't make it in jail. I'm not wired to make it in jail, So, yeah, I'm having a mild panic attack. And then he goes, and secondly, you're an alcoholic. And he was the first person who kind of said that out loud to me. It's like, not that I didn't know that. It's like, I knew that, but there was something about it being spoken out loud. And he's like, so, we're going to do what we can do. And in the meantime, like, you're going to go to AA meetings and, you're going to like get this card signed. And, we have to like build a case that at least you're like you're recognizing like the circumstances that you're in. And so it was a scared straight situation. And I would go to AA meetings, but I wasn't, and I was trying to like not drink, but I wasn't really doing the program. I wasn't like really interested in being sober.
Just there
like,
physically.
I was just scared at that time.
Yeah.
And this remarkable thing happened. Like, so I have these 2 court cases and they're in separate jurisdictions. One is the courthouse is in Beverly Hills, and the other one is, even though the accident had taken place on Melrose, it was like in West LA or something. And the lawyers are like, we're trying to make sure that like whoever the judges are in these things don't know about the other one, like that's our only play here. Like in 2025, that would never happen because it's all computerized, right? So, but honestly, a miracle happened, which was the docket, like the file for the first case got lost. They couldn't find it. And so they couldn't pursue charges against me.
So you never got any kind of notification like, hey, show up for court this date. Hey, here's a ticket for drinking.
I can't remember, but all I know is that my lawyers were like, you're never going to believe it. Like they literally can't find the file for your case for one of these cases. So the only one that went forward was the one in Beverly Hills. And because it was being treated as an isolated incident, we were able to plead out, and I got I got community service and a bunch of stuff like that. But I avoided jail time, and like that doesn't happen. So what's going on? It's like I was given this like blessing, this gift. That still to this day, I'm like, that is astonishing that happened, because I really should have gone to jail for, and not for like 30 days, like probably for, but not like years. It probably would have been like a 90-day sentence or something like that.
That, as crazy as it sounds, something similar happened to me when I was right after I got out of college. I was living in Boston for about a year with my Boston friends, who a lot of them were like inner city kids, like aggressive guys. And we came out of a bar, and for whatever reason, there was like a mallet in my car, but not like, I never had a blue collar job. I don't know what it was for. I had a landscaping job at one point, but I don't know. We had an argument with someone outside of a bar, and one of my buddies was like, I'll hit you in the head with this mallet. And I was like, why do you even have that out here? And we left. And in the middle of the night, I didn't live with my dad. I was living with my grandmother at the time. Just she had a house in the city in Somerville. And middle of the night, way before cell phones, this is like in 1990, my dad calls in the middle of the night, which was odd. And he's like, hey, were you in Boston tonight? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah. He's like, yeah, well, the Boston police just called me, and they have like an arrest warrant for you for like threatening to kill someone with a hammer. And I was like, oh my God. He said the cops called and said he has the same name as me. And they were like, yeah, were you in Boston? He's like, is this your license plate number? And my dad's like, no, that's not my license plate number, but I know who it is. Long story short, I get a notice to go to court, and I tell my buddy who did it, I'm like, listen, I don't want to go in there and tell him you did it, but I am not going to go in there and get a charge with assault. It was a cop that he threatened to kill, like,
oh, wow.
Off duty. And I said, you're going to come with me and tell them, and don't put me in this position. We get the court date. He comes. I don't know if they lost the case. They knew that there was a charge, but the cop never showed up. They had been sending the notice to the cop's wrong address. And after we showed up twice and he didn't show up, they threw it out. And I was like, but my buddy, I was like, man, you are lucky, because I wasn't.
Yeah, that's
like,
crazy.
You do
lucky.
something stupid, like you own it.
Yeah, crazy lucky.
So I always find it intriguing when people are facing jail time. Obviously, I worked in the prison for several years when I was in college, and seeing that firsthand when you're not a criminal. Although my brother and my brother and my stepfather had been inmates in the prison, and I had knew a million people in there, it was still so. I couldn't think of a more intimidating, nerve-wracking situation. And sometimes when I get nervous about anything, even doing this interview, I was telling you before, I was like, oh, I'm very anxious. When I think about the things that could happen to you, I'm like, oh my God, this is a party. Like, we get to do this. This is like such a privilege. So I'm just wondering, like, your mindset at the time when you're facing something so scary, like, oh my God, I'm going to go to jail. Like, coming from Stanford, and like, you don't strike me as someone who's going to thrive there. And it's incredibly intimidating, and it's intentionally so. Like, it's almost like the inmates can seize upon someone who hasn't been there before. I always tell people, if you go to jail and you're not a street person, you don't know people from the streets, it's going to be very uncomfortable for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I would have been lunch meat, So I dodged that bullet, and it still was a very long time before I actually got sober after that. And I think there's the fear, yeah, but there's also the deep shame, the humiliation, the embarrassment, but really like the shame. And the shame powers your desire to like keep everything secret. You just compartmentalize this stuff. You pretend like everything's fine. You don't tell anyone what's really going on. And you just hide all these things from everybody, which, creates all this dissonance in your life. And the truth of the matter is, like, I was just way off the reservation with my behavior. I was also in a career path that like I probably shouldn't have been. And that was like making me more unhappy and making me want to drink more and more and more. And I was pursuing like what I thought I was supposed to be doing, for somebody who had grown up the way that I grew up and had the education that I had, which is like, I'm going to go be this lawyer, and this is what it's going to be like, and this is what my life is going to be like. And the universe had other plans, obviously, but, I had to get beaten up quite a bit. And so, you're somebody who has changed your life in certain ways. And I've had a couple different, this is like, just one of a couple transformations that I've undergone. And when I think about like change, which is always like a recurring theme and topic on my show, like, how do you get somebody to change, or like, how do you make changes for yourself when you want to, and why is it so hard? And it's just, all I know is that like, I have to get bludgeoned by the universe before I wake up enough to be willing to do anything different. And the way I kind of phrase that is, it's only when the pain of your circumstances exceeds the fear of, change and doing that different thing, because it's scary to do something different. And you'd rather sit in the pain you're familiar with than, venture into the pain of like not knowing what's going to happen if you do something different. And you're just like clutching onto this like path and this, frame on the world and your behavior like it's life or death, even though you're driving it like right off a cliff.
All of everything you're saying is so familiar, and it's like parallel to what happened to me too. You're like in this vicious cycle where it's like AA when they tell you just take it one day at a time. When you're in it, it's so hard to comprehend. Like, how am I going to live a sober life when all I've known is getting high every day? When you were drinking in the shower, I'd wake up first thing in the morning and get high. It would be the only way I could get out of bed. I was so debilitated. But before we start talking about the comeback story, the other like misstep that I want to talk to you about is the marriage. And because that story to me is like when you got married, went on your honeymoon, it was clear right before the marriage, that right before the wedding, that this wasn't going to work out, but you kept going through with it. It's interesting to me that no one else picked up on anything. But I think it's important for people to realize, like, no matter what you're going through, people have been there before, and people have come back from everything. And that story to me just highlights like how deep into the addiction you were, because, well, I'll let you tell the story. But
yeah, I always struggle with how to tell this story, because in order to really understand it, there's so many details that have to be explained, and I don't want to spend an hour telling this story. But I will say this. First of all, this wedding took place after those DUIs had occurred. And I had, gotten scared straight and had put together a little bit of sober time, even though I wasn't really doing the program.
And how long were you engaged?
So I had gotten engaged. I was living in San Francisco as a lawyer. I I moved to Los Angeles for this job. And not long after I moved to LA, I got engaged to this woman who lived in Palo Alto, who I'd been seeing for, I don't know, probably a year and a half or something like that at this point. And the idea was that we get married and she was going to move to Los Angeles. But I'm living by myself in LA, which is like, you don't want, like in a new city by myself. That's not a good headspace for an alcoholic, right? Like, oh, here's a whole new canvas where I can like paint my chaos.
And you're working in a job that's work. It's not like, I can't wait to get there.
No. And a high pressure job, high expectations, incredibly long hours, and a very interesting place. Like this was a law firm where a lot of like LA's most high profile cases were going down, like these like LAPD excessive force cases, but also a lot of very interesting like entertainment stuff. And like I said, like Robert Shapiro was like right there. And like I was assigned cases and I was working with him on stuff. Like it was a very interesting place. It's just like, I wasn't built for this world. But anyway.
One thing I want to say, sorry to interrupt this, that feeling is exactly what I was going through. I was like working as a bank. I was on a trading desk. I had everything that I thought that everyone thought that I should have. Like, I identified as a Wall Street trader. I hated every second of it. I like it. And the drugs were just a way for me to like get to the next day.
Yeah, it was just it was a coping mechanism for like, because deep down, constitutionally, you're like not living the life you're supposed to be living. And like to really confront that is too painful. So let's just like medicate our way through it, because everyone else seems to be able to show up at work and do it, and they seem fine and kind of like they enjoy it. Yeah. Like, I don't know, like I'm trying to like, why can't I enjoy it the way that they,
Exactly.
Anyway. So I'm engaged. It's proceeding towards this wedding. But of course, it's a long distance relationship. All of a sudden, we're seeing each other less and less and less. I had a history of not being honest with this person. She, finds out about these DUIs. And so she, she becomes aware of like kind of what she's getting involved in all of a sudden. And, of course, that's terrifying to her. Like, what am I'm going to marry this guy who's doing this stuff. But in my mind, I'm like, I'm sober now.
But she's seen you drinking. She knows you can get it on.
But she hadn't seen the super dark stuff. Oh, okay. And so it was like, clearly there's like, I'm sure she's like, I need to get out of this.
Okay.
And I just think that she didn't know how to get out of it. And so kind of the train had pulled out of the station, and it was in her mind like kind of too late to pull the plug on this thing. And she had made this like decision in her mind that she was just going to let it happen and then figure out a way out of it afterwards. So this is not like the best strategy, right? But I'm unaware of this, and I'm like, we're getting married, and I'm starting to realize like she's a little like not like it doesn't feel right, but I don't have a lot of tools, to navigate like relationships and emotional, kind of struggles, et cetera. And so I'm going along to get along. And, at the rehearsal dinner, it's like she didn't really seem to want to be around me. Like, it was like all the indicia were there. Like I should have like called the whole thing off, and I think she was sort of purposely giving me the signals, hoping that I would do that. But like, that's not what happened. And she said to me like, hey, I think it would be best if we don't sign the marriage certificate. Like this was before, like the night before the wedding or whatever. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, what do you mean? And so here she is trying to figure out like the only thing that she could do to try to protect herself, this poor woman. It's like, this is where it gets difficult to really understand, or to try to understand why I would behave the way that I would behave. But I just wanted it to happen. I wanted everything to be fine. Yeah. I wanted her to be happy. So I was like, I agreed to this, even though like, why would you do that? Right. The person who was marrying us was a federal judge who was a family friend of hers. And he had recently been nominated to the Ninth Circuit, and he's African-American, and it was a big deal. So he was going to be the first like African-American on the Ninth Circuit bench. Yep. He was in that process where they vet you for that. So, all eyes are on him. So it felt a little bit weird, like this guy's a judge, and like, there's like, I'm not so comfortable about that, but I agreed to it. So we have this wedding, and it's in Palo Alto. Everybody I cared about in the world is there. I have like 3,000 groomsmen, it's like the whole deal, right?
No one's picking up on any tension.
Nobody is, except I'm like, it's clear like something.
Yeah,
Like if
to
you
you.
were if you were there, you're having a good time. Like
Yeah.
you don't know what's going on. But if you were actually paying attention, you're like, this is messed up.
Yeah.
Like you could tell, right?
Okay.
So that night, the whole like she was so offstandish that when we kind of get to the hotel for our our evening, right? And it's
Yeah.
like you do that, pick her up and cross the,
Yeah.
like whatever. I sort of joked. I was like, do you want me to do that? And she just kind of like scoffed at me. And I was like, oh man, like what have I done? Like what's happening here? And we were supposed to go to Jamaica on this honeymoon. And I was like, I'm not going anywhere with you. Like we got to talk, She was not interested in talking to me. Long story short, like the honeymoon was paid for. And in my mind, I guess I just said like, well, when we get there, like I can talk to her. I got to understand what's going on. We go to Jamaica. She wants nothing to do with me. We're staying in the same room, but like, she doesn't want to talk to me. She doesn't want to touch me. And I'm like, give her space, give her time. Like I'm going to allow her to like get into a headspace where at least we can have a conversation about whatever is happening with her. And I just couldn't see, my part in this at all, like why she would feel the way that she felt. And ultimately it just got to the point where I was like, I can't take it anymore. And I was like, you need to leave. Like I can't be around you right now unless you're willing to talk to me. And she said, fine. And she left. And suddenly I'm alone in Jamaica in a hotel room. And I'd been sober at 6 months at that point. And I rung the front desk of this hotel and I was like, bring me a 12 pack of Red Stripe. And that was it, and I was back out there. I was so emotionally devastated by this and humiliated and embarrassed and ashamed. I was going to have to go back home and like tell all these people that, this marriage isn't happening. And like, like how embarrassing, I was just so humiliated, because I just didn't think anything like that would ever happen to me. And I think that the emotional scars of that were so deep. Like I had to drink, like I couldn't deal with that, the reality of that sober. And so I think it was probably another like 6 or 8 months of really heavy drinking before I finally just got to that point where I was like, I can't live this way anymore. But drinking at that point was like a survival mechanism.
Yeah.
Like it's like, but that was my bottom. It's like, oh, well, you get sober when you hit your bottom. Like that was really my bottom. But the day, I guess the day I decided to like reach out and ask for help was a pretty kind of normal day in the life of an alcoholic.
Yeah.
It wasn't like the night before was some chaos. It's just like I finally was like I was sick and tired of being sick and tired and ready to like do what I didn't want to do, which was like ask somebody else to help me.
It's unbelievable. It's just, this is one of the things that I love most about you is that even through all that, you're like looking for ways to accept your share of the responsibility versus,
But that's what sobriety is. Like I have a lot of compassion for this poor woman who, found herself in a situation she didn't want to be in and just didn't really have the ability to save herself and really wanted me to do the heavy lifting here. But I was in no condition. I didn't have the awareness to do that. And I could be mad at her or whatever. It's like I was resentful for a long time. And now I truly, honestly, like all I have is compassion for her. And I hope that her life now is super happy and fulfilling and meaningful. Because, had that not happened, like I wouldn't have the life that I have today. And I had to go through that, in order to, become the person that I am today. And so when I think about challenges and obstacles and things that happen to us, I'm always looking at them through the lens of them being like opportunities to grow and evolve. And, I think life is better when you say, this isn't happening to me, it's happening for me. And it's my job to figure out like what that for is and leverage that for my growth and my evolution, as opposed to, saying how terrible it is. And the truth is we don't have perspective when we're in it. Like everything's bad when it's happening. And then you look back through the crystal clear lens of the rear view mirror and you're like, oh, that was the best thing that ever happened to me. And this is not to say that like, look, terrible things happen. I'm not trying to be Pollyanna about bad shit. I just think that we're not the best judges of positive versus negative, when we're in the crux of those like difficult moments. But they are powerful levers for growth if you're willing to like grab onto them. And I think we're here to grow and evolve. And I think we, on some level, perhaps we signed up for this ahead of time, and it's like, this is what I need to learn in this incarnation of life. And life is going to throw me this thing. And the reason it's doing that is because this is the lesson that I've been refusing to learn, that I need to learn in order to kind of go to the next level of my, self-actualization.
All right, guys, it's been about 6 months since I started taking liposomal NAD Plus from Raw Nutrition, and I've got to say, I'm absolutely loving this stuff. The biggest thing I've noticed, my energy levels stay consistent all day. No highs, no crashes. I'm not reaching for 3 cups of coffee just to get through the afternoon. I'm sleeping better, recovering better, and honestly, I just feel sharper. NAD Plus fuels your cells. It drives mitochondrial function, recovery, and cognitive performance. The science is solid, but for me, it's simple. I feel better, I train better, I show up better. What I like about Ro is that they don't cut corners. Every batch is third-party tested, so what they say is in it is actually in it. And their liposomal delivery system helps your body actually absorb the stuff. Pro athletes, trainers, and health experts are making Ro's NAD Plus a staple of their routine because it works. NAD Plus from Ro Nutrition. I don't think you'll be disappointed. Give it a shot. Right now, you can try it risk-free for 60-day money-back guarantee, plus get 20% off with code RIDEOUT at checkout. Again, that's 20% off at rownutrition.com/rideout. One thing I always try to remind myself when I'm feeling bad for myself, something bad happens to me, I have an argument with my wife, anything. I keep reminding myself, as painful it is, like, you're not a victim. What did you do to get here? Okay, sometimes something tragic is going to happen to you completely out of your control, but at least for me, a lot of the problems that we have, they're almost self-induced, whether it's addiction, problems with relationships. You ask yourself, like, what have I done to make this person think that this is okay to treat me like this? And what am I going to do about it? I gave a speech at a prison once and gave a huge long lecture about no one here is a victim. I know you're all sitting there, oh, the judge did this to me and the police, they framed me and they did this. All you're going to do is prolong the agony of being here until you just realize, like, you know what, whatever happened. You have to let it go, because hanging on to that and trying to get vengeance and thinking about those things only makes the getting out of the hole that much harder. It makes the hole even deeper when you're hanging on to that. So when you started the process of getting out of that dark hole, talk to me about the actual rehab. I think your parents introduced you or made an appointment for you with a psychologist or a psychiatrist in LA. What happens from there in the rehab process?
My parents who had said, listen, we don't want, we can't be involved in this anymore. But what they did do, they started going to Al-Anon meetings, and then they found an addiction medicine specialist, a psychiatrist in Los Angeles. And they said, we found this person if you're open to going to see this person. And I agreed to that. He had an office down by LAX. And the reason why his office was by LAX is because a lot of his patients were pilots. So just put that in your pipe and smoke it. You know what I mean? Right. So anyway, he was amazing. A long time, sober guy himself who had been, working with people like myself forever and ever and ever. And he was another straight talker who was like, this is what you need. Do you want it? If you want to get sober, this is what you're going to have to do. And I was making deals with him and bargaining with him and well, let me just try it my way one more time, But I did make this deal. This is the hilarious part. And this is a lens into the alcoholic mind. I kept relapsing and coming back, but I was honest with him. And then he's like, you really need to go to treatment. And I was like, okay, I'll make a deal with you. I think I got it this time. But if I relapse one more time, then I will, then I'll do it, And he's like, all right. So sure enough, I relapsed, of course. Right. But Ken, I am a man of my word. You know what I mean? So I was I went to him and I was like, I'll do it now because I told you that I would, thinking I'm this upstanding citizen, it's just absurd, He must have been laughing the whole time. But anyway, he got me sorted out with a bed at this facility, and I got on a plane and flew up to Portland, and a van picked me up and drove me and dropped me off at this place in the woods where I thought I was going to be there for a couple weeks because, I got important shit to do, get a blow dry and get back get back at it. Right. Just need a little pipe cleaning. And
It's funny when people who are suffering with addiction, they think, I don't have the time, I can't afford to do this. And obviously in treatment, they'll tell you, you can't afford not to do it. So when I've spoken with people who have reached out, either they're going through this themselves, that's the number one thing. It's like, I really can't afford to take time off. I say, well, would you rather be dead? Like, I mean, you look at the life you could have if you have people that, like yourself, that inspire. You can't be that until you do this.
Yeah.
No, there's no shortcut.
It's really hard to hear that though when you're in that state. But I was there and I was like, I'm here. I don't ever want to be here again. So I'm going to like do what they tell me to do, yep. And one of the first exercises was like, okay, we want you to write down 10 incidents where, something crazy happened, but like start off with like, here's what my plan was, and then like, here's what happened, some calamity, right? Here's how it made me feel. And then the final and most important step was like, here's how it made other people feel, or here's how other people were impacted by that, which is like, for an alcoholic, you're just like, leave me alone. Like it's nobody's business, and like you have no concept of how your behavior is, wreaking havoc and creating pain for all these other people in your life. And so I was really honest in that exercise, and I had to get up in front of a bunch of people and like read this. And afterwards, one of the counselors pulled me aside and he's like, I know you think you're going to be out of here in a couple of weeks, but like,
it's always amazing how quickly they see right through you.
He's like, I've been doing this a long time. He's like, you have a pretty advanced case of alcoholism, based upon what you've shared, like the amounts that you were drinking and all that. And we don't typically see this in people your age. Like this is what we see in, 65-year-old men who've been drinking their whole lives. And we think that, you're free to go whenever you want, but like, we think that you should probably stick around, longer than maybe you might imagine. And I was able to hear that. And I ended up staying in that place for 100 days, and it changed my life. And I'm, eternally grateful. And I've gone back a few times to like go to meetings there and stuff like that. So it's just, it was a crucible moment in my life.
Do you ever have moments where you wake up and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm sober. Look what I've done as a result of the hard work. Do you ever have moments of just like taking it all in and being like, I did this?
That's danger zone for me, because that's when I know that I'm indulging in my ego and self-will.
Let me reframe.
So what I mean, let me just contextualize this a little bit. Like one of the things that you learn in sobriety is this notion of surrender. Like you have got, like your way is not working, dude. Like you got to let it go. You have got to recognize the fact that you're not actually in control of anything. And you got to release it to a higher power, whatever that is in your mind, and like let something bigger than yourself in to take over the reins of your life, which is a very confronting and threatening concept. And, it gets conflated with like, oh, you're giving up on life. And it's not that. It's sort of like, it's a humbling experience that allows you to have a little bit more objectivity on like your errant ways. And there's a mysticism and a spiritual quality to it. But when I look at my life, the fact that I'm sitting across from you and we're in this incredible studio and I have this beautiful family and these kids that are healthy and bills that I can afford to pay and opportunities that, I never thought possible, kind of coming my way. Like my life is so far beyond anything I could have possibly imagined for myself. And that allows me to really get that like, this, I worked hard, but like this didn't happen because like, I orchestrated it, like there's something going on here that is beyond like my ability to manifest. Like I'm very clear. And the minute I start thinking like I did this and this is me and look at me and all of that, like that's leading you back towards a drink.
I guess what I mean, less than of being like hands in the air, like you just want to raise. I think more of I'll have moments where I'm just like, I can't believe I did this, that I'm sober. I can't believe I got out of that
gratitude.
The gratitude is sometimes, once in a while, it will hit me and it will be overwhelming. And I'm like, I can do anything. Not in an arrogant way, but just like, because when I was in that, I was like, I'm never getting out of this. I'm either going to die from this drugs or I'm going to kill myself, because the thought of being sick for a month is incomprehensible, so much so that I'll stay in the addiction for 10 more years.
I think that, you shared with me before the show that the core idea behind this is to like be helpful to people who are feeling stuck or a little bit lost in their life or are in that place where they can't see a way
or
out.
even a lot lost.
And it's easy for you and I to sit here and like trade crazy stories and talk about how hard it was. But I think for the person who's watching or listening, there's that idea like, yeah, but they're different, or they're special, or yeah, it was really hard, but they kind of knew, you know, what they needed to do, or they knew what it was going to look like, you know. It's like, no, you don't get that. Like when you're in the fucking shit like that, and your back is up against the wall and everyone's running for the hills, nobody is picking up the phone when you call them, and you know the cops are knocking at the door, and you know that guy's going to call you and fire you, like all that stuff. Like, no, you're in free fall, dude. You can't see your way out of this.
That's exactly.
And the crazy thing about alcoholism, it's like, hey man, here's where it's headed. You know, jails, institutions, and death, clear as day. Like you've already checked 2 of these boxes. You know what I mean? Like what's left? And it's like, the joke in AA is like, do you want to be happy, joyous, and free? Or do you want jails, institutions, and death? Sobriety, happy, joyous, and free. Keep drinking, jails, institutions, or death. What do you want? And it's like, I'm going to need to get back to you on that. You know?
It's certainly not easy, but if I could convey something to anyone, people ask me all the time when they're going through it, especially if they're about to go to rehab, like, how do you get through like the day to day? What about 2 weeks in, a month in? I'm just like, it's like when you start to like, imagine all your dreams coming true. None of them are going to happen unless you take this step. So nothing really good can happen until this is resolved. Once it's resolved, who knows what can happen? It's almost like better to try and fail than to keep doing what you're doing, which is failing on a daily basis. But
all of those are like academic ideas. Like when you're like brand new, it's just like, dude, do you think you can make it another hour? Like, okay, call me in an hour. Right. Call me in an hour. You know, like that's all you have to, like, your only job is for your head to hit the pillow that night without taking a drink or doing a drug or whatever. Point. And like, that's it. Like nothing else is relevant. And I will tell you, for like the first 2 years of my sobriety, I had no idea what the fuck I was doing. I was going to like 2 meetings a day. I would wake up in my place in Venice and I would drive, like this is after I got out of treatment, and I would drive to the log cabin in West Hollywood for the morning meeting, and I made coffee. And that was like, you know, a crazy place, like this meeting, but it was exciting. It was like, oh man, what's going to happen, you know? And then I would like go to breakfast with people, and we would sit for an hour and a half and shoot the shit or whatever. But I'm like, what am I doing? Like, where is this heading? Like, where am I going? I had no anchor or sense of direction in my life. It was just like, all I know is that I'm going to like go to the log cabin in the morning, and that's what's important. And everyone just said, like, just keep doing this. Like all the other stuff gets sorted out if you make this your first priority. But like after you've been doing it for a year, even like, when you're like, oh man, I got my chip, or great. And it's like, okay, but like, why are we doing this? Like,
like, I'm ready for the good stuff.
You have no, I just thought like, I made peace with the fact that like, hey man, forget about the lawyer job, whatever I'm doing. Like, I have to be like, okay, like, hey, if it's just this, and I'm going to these meetings, and like I have enough money to like buy breakfast for myself and whatever, like I have to be okay with that, you know? And it was only when I, you know, really like made peace with that I think I, you know, opened up the possibility for something more. And looking back at it, it's like, oh, well, you needed to like really have this foundation of sobriety in order for you to do these other things or whatever. But like when you're in it, you're like, my life has hit a dead end. And like, I don't think it's ever going to be different than this. You know, that's the experience of it.
Whether it's my training, recovery, or work, it all depends on how I fuel myself. That's why I love Athletic Brewing Company, the nation's leading non-alcoholic brewery. Launched back in 2018, they've completely shattered expectations for how great non-alcoholic brews can taste. The stuff genuinely tastes awesome, and their NA brews aren't just for the sober. This is truly great near beer. Whether you're not drinking for a round, a day, a month, or forever, with over 25 styles brewed each year, Athletic Brewing has got something for everyone. Personally, I love the Run Wild IPA and Athletic Light. They've become part of my routine. No hangover, no compromise. So whether you're looking to buy online or in person, go to athleticbrewing.com. If you're buying online, use promo code RIDEOUT for 25% off your first order. That's athleticbrewing.com, code RIDEOUT. Athletic Brewing Company, fit for all times. Well, as an example of all the different outcomes that you can go through or experience going through recovery, like I traded one addiction for another. I immediately started in doing endurance sports, and that became my identity. And we've spoken about this, and that's my own separate challenge dealing with like not having to feel attached to endurance sports to feel any sense of worth. But that's how I coped with it, where you were going to 2 meetings a day. I was never like a big meeting person. And I also felt a struggle to find the kind of meeting I was looking for, because my problem was never alcohol. Like, relatively speaking, I was a drug addict. So I was in London. I went to NA meetings in like 2001 when I first got sober, like the first round of sobriety. And then I never really found a good a good network of meetings when I was in New York, blah, blah, blah. But I found endurance sports, and that became like my form of therapy, for better or worse. And I fully acknowledge that, okay, I'm just trading one addiction for another, but this addiction at least makes me feel good about myself, and is like, to a certain extent made other people think that I had some sense of value. But you didn't do it. How long did it take for you to get into endurance sports after you got sober?
Over 10 years.
Oh, wow. I don't think I realized that.
Yeah. So I got sober at 31. Like I said, those first years was like, I'm just building my foundation of sobriety. I'm grateful that I didn't get fired from that job. They let me go to, like, for all of the hard ass, kind of hard talks that I had with that partner that I was working for. He's like, when I was like, I need to go to treatment, he's like, go, and so they were very supportive of that. And I'm incredibly grateful for that. So when I got back, I went back to that job. I knew that like, the law was not, for me, but like I needed a job, like I had bills to pay and stuff like that. And so my idea was I need to get back to being that person that I was before I fucked up everything, rather than like, how do I grow into the person that maybe I'm meant to be? Because I'm so caught up with other people's perception and expectations, and this person that I thought I should be, this upwardly mobile, like, a lot of that has to do with like the way that I was raised, et cetera. But, I just wanted to be a responsible member of society who was upwardly mobile in this, kind of fancy law firm where I was going to be a partner, and this is what it was going to mean. And this is the car I was going to drive, and I would be able to flex in this way and that, and go to the fancy place for lunch or whatever. That's as far as my thinking was going. And to some degree, I like accomplished that. Like I became somebody who could tell the truth and show up on time and all that kind of stuff. And it took until, basically when I turned 40 to have another reckoning, like another bottom, where I had this existential crisis. Like I was so, like it looked like my life was pretty together, but it really wasn't. Like I was, just extremely unhappy in this chosen profession, which, I'd left that firm. There were other kind of like iterations of being a lawyer, but I was just like, what am I doing? I just felt my life was devoid of meaning, even though I'd met my wife and, I had a lot of good stuff going on, but I also hadn't been taking care of myself. I was like, you were doing endurance sports and I was doing like endurance eating, like I was like eating fast food, just, I didn't become like an obese guy, but I looked like a guy who like works too many hours in a law firm. You know what I mean? I was like eating fast food and Chinese takeout late at night. And like, just, that was my comfort amidst this uncomfortable kind of life that I'd created for myself. And, I had to play that out until I was ready once again to, kind of pay attention to how I was living and make changes. And so that all transpired like basically right at the time that I turned 40, when I kind of had this staircase incident where I couldn't walk up up the stairs up to my bedroom without having to take a break and winded and all this kind of stuff. I've told the story many times, but it reminded me of that day that I got sober. And I know that, and I was able to recognize like, oh, this is this is a perishable moment, like I'm being like invited to take action in a similar way that I did when I decided to go to that treatment center. And because I'd had that experience, I was able to recognize that and honor it. And I was like, I need to do something now. Like I had this willingness. I was like, I need to do something. I feel like I'm motivated to do something right now. And I also know if I wait, that's going to go away and I'll forget about the whole thing. And so that's what set me into this world of like trying to change my relationship with food. And that led to kind of restoring my vitality. And with all this energy I suddenly had, like, realizing that I wanted to revisit what it would be like to be an athlete. Like I'd been a swimmer at Stanford and competed at a high level, but my alcoholism kind of prevented me from ever reaching my potential. And in my mid 40s, I had kind of been reborn and wanted to pursue what that might look like. And so that's when I got into all the ultra endurance stuff.
In a lot of ways, you almost provided like a roadmap for people like me, because I knew of you, and John Joseph had introduced us via email, and then you didn't respond to me. I'm like, this effing guy, Rich, doesn't respond to my emails. And Rob Moore, who's the podfather, I love Rob Moore, is the producer of this show, and he was like, oh no, you'll love Rich. And early on, I was like, I want to meet Rich. I don't know what I wanted. I just was like, I like this guy. I just want to connect with them. And Rob was like, give it time. And then literally.
But you know what was going on with me.
Oh, of course. So
I was scared of you.
Which is crazy.
I was like,
to
this
me.
guy, like, he wants to go run and ride, but like, I don't, he's going to want to like throw the hammer down and like, like it's going to be a dick measuring. I'd projected this whole thing onto you. And I was like, this guy's, first of all, he's way more fit than he's going to kill me, And I was like, I don't know if like, you just intimidated me. That's why maybe I was like reluctant to like, kind of jump into the.
I guess I can understand why someone might think that if they didn't know me, but anyone who does know me, who's ever trained or done anything with me, unless it's a race, like I feel like at times I'm almost overcompensating to not make anyone feel uncomfortable, because I don't know. I feel like, hey, if you want to test, like, let's sign up for the same race. Otherwise, I don't need to like race with you on the Malibu mountains above Malibu.
Wasn't there something like you would train with Lance Armstrong?
Oh, with Lance, I wanted to kill.
I'm going to fucking kill this guy. And I was like,
no, with Lance, I wanted to kill.
Too much alpha energy for for my like zone 2 disposition.
No, that's true. With Lance, I wanted to kill him all the time because I know that he had that mentality too. So like in a lot of ways, maybe it was my own security, but definitely with Lance, I was like, yeah, I'm going to kill you. But no one else that I've ever trained with. Like I trained with a gazillion people, but I don't ever feel like that. Like I said, at times I would almost overcompensate by being like, okay, this person isn't very fit. I'm like, the last thing I want to do is make them feel worse. I'm just going to like train.
But this is like, that wasn't the perception that I had of you. And that's not your fault. Like that's just something I projected onto you, and you're projecting something onto me because I didn't get back to you. And this is how, like this is what we do. Right. And this is how we fuck ourselves up, know, because it's sort of like contempt prior to investigation. Like you're making a judgment on like what kind of person I am because I didn't get back to you. And I'm thinking, I have this whole idea of who you are that got, I got disabused of that as soon as I met you, but it just took me a long time to like make, until that happened.
I would ride by your house, not like a stalker, just because it was on a common route, right? And every time I'd be like, maybe one of these days Rich will be out there and I'll just say, hey, I'm Ken. And like, we could be friends. Because I was like, I think I would be good friends with Richard. Nevertheless, all right. The one thing that I really relate to, and I think a lot of other people can too, at least I get this, I think that people, they don't see the losses, they only see the wins. Like, so for me, people will, if they were to introduce me or read about, oh, here's all the great things that Ken did in endurance sports, no one ever talks about the losses, the DNFs, the like huge mistakes that I've made. And the one thing that I think we have, I know we have in common is your first triathlon had, I think it was Wildflower. What happened?
Yeah, I'd gotten interested in triathlon. It was that like, oh, I'm 40, midlife crisis. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, Same. Maybe I'll do a triathlon, like that Same. Kind of thing. And I didn't know what I was doing, but I thought I was pretty fit because I had been like working out and feeling really good, and I'd lost all this weight. And I'd entered like a sprint triathlon here or there or whatever. And I was like, okay, time to step it up. And I go to this Wildflower race, which is a kind of a legendary half Ironman race in California, and known for being a very difficult course.
Yeah.
And I'm all full of vim and vigor, and I have this swimming background. So as soon as the swim starts, I'm like, I'm going right to the front.
Of course.
Like, so I get right up in there, and then you finish the swim, but there's all this chop, and so I'm getting tossed around. Like, this is not going the way that I thought. And you get to the end of that swim, and it's literally like this. It must be like a 15% grade, like up out of the water, just to get to the place where you put your cleats on to get on the bike. And I get on the bike, and then it's just this climb. It seemed like forever, and I'm toast. Like 2 miles into this thing, and I struggle through the bike. I finish the bike leg, and I get off and I put my running shoes on, and I don't make it like 400 meters before I just completely cramp up and I can't run at all or whatever, and just like DNF'd. And it was awesome because it's like, oh, you don't know anything about like, you think and you don't. But what was great about that was that it motivated me to like hire a coach and learn. And I thought I knew a lot about like how to train because I'd been trained as a swimmer. You know, I'd spent like, I don't know, 20 years in the pool pushing myself. And I figured I had an advantage over all of these other people. And I needed that reckoning in order to humble myself enough to, kind of have a beginner's mind about this.
Again, similar experience. I had saw triathlon, same thing as you. It was like, I need something to identify with. I need something that's just mine. It's not work. It's like something that I can focus on and feel good about and proud of, and I need to stay in shape. And same thing, qualified for Kona in Hawaii, and to me it was like going to the Olympics. I was like, yes, I did it. Of course, I get there, the going gets tough, and I quit on the run. And quitting at that race motivated me to train so hard because the feeling that I experienced, although it was all my own self-talk, was so demoralizing and embarrassing that I was like, I am never going to feel like a quitter again. And in a lot of ways, I'm like, thank God that happened because it really like released something in me like that I didn't think would have. Looking back, I can't believe what I've been able to do just from grinding. And but to the same extent, I don't want to be identified as like, oh yeah, endurance sports. But like, as we've talked about before, like it's like a mask for other things that I've got to deal with, and it's like my one way of projecting, I guess success, for lack of a better term. But again, one of the things that I love about you is you identify all these things so easily. And from the first interview that we did together, when you brought up, do you think that this is an addiction? More people commented to me about that part of the conversation than anything else. And the one thing that I really want to get into along those lines is, you had back surgery. Walk me through like how the injury happened, what you've done to what you did to like kind of solve for it, and then how it's been emotionally and how you're dealing with not being able to train at all right now.
Can I address the first part of
course,
what you shared with respect to like the addiction and the endurance sports and all that kind of stuff? I think with respect to anything, whether it's endurance sports or work or, choose your poison, you can use it as a lever for growth or as a, closet in which to hide. So take running, use running as a proxy for endurance sports. Like, are you running to run towards something, or are you running to run away from something?
Yep.
And it can be both things.
That's right.
And I've had both experiences with endurance sports. Like, it was an incredible lever for physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual growth for me, at a time in which I was very confused, to be able to just be out on my bike or out on a trail for hours and hours and hours alone, trying to make sense of my confusing life and trying to figure out what a way forward might be, was really critical. It was a very important piece in a very critical moment in my life, that in many ways like helped save me, And so like all of my pursuits in ultra endurance, to me, like I'm like, these are spiritual journeys,
Mm-hmm.
like it really, there's the physical stuff, whatever. But like really this was about like me trying to understand who I was and what I wanted my life to be and look like. And it served that. But I've also been the guy who's been the compulsive trainer, hyper competitive, and have kind of let it become my higher power. And, at the cost of other aspects of my life. Like I was pursuing it. We were financially destitute for years and years and years. We came within 48 hours of losing our house. Like I put a lot on the line for something like, it's like no one cares about, and I was gambling with my family's well-being in doing that. And I have to like be, I have to really like be honest about the selfish aspect of that. And it's easy to go, oh, well, yeah, but it led to this and now it's all good or whatever. But like when you're in it, I'm like, am I a piece of shit? Like, what am I doing? What am I doing? I felt like an insane person and everyone thought we were insane. I wasn't making any money, but I was spending all day training and I have little kids and I can't pay my bills. Like this is part of like not knowing, so much so that, and this is leading up into the back stuff, that at the end of 2011, I had spent the entire year training for this Ultraman race, this double Ironman race where you like circumnavigate the big island of Hawaii over 3 days. And this is a race in which I'd done well in the past. But this year I was in it to win it. Like I was a maniac. I was down to like 156 pounds.
Jeez.
I'll show you pictures of how lean I was. It was crazy, right? And I ended up DNFing. Like I was like too lean. Like I got like a sort of like a bronchial infection or whatever, because I was just, my immune system was compromised. I ended up like relapsing a couple days later, like in front of a beach bar in the middle of the afternoon.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know that part of the story.
And it was a 1-day 4-beer relapse. It's like the lamest relapse of all time. And I ended up in an AA meeting that night, but it was like incredibly humiliating. Like my little kids and my wife saw me like kind of buzzed and like this. And I promised myself that would never happen. And on top of that, I had already turned in the locked manuscript for Finding Ultra, but it had not come out yet. And this was a book in which I talk about like my addiction and my recovery. And this book is going to come out and it's going to be like this, you know, like it's going to be like, I'm positioning myself as like an authority on sobriety. You know what I mean? And here imagine that. Like, imagine like right before your book comes out, you go on a wild bender. I am the biggest piece of shit, like fraud, fucked up. Like I really went into a shame spiral. And I share that story because, you know, relapse is part of sobriety and we're human. And I had gotten to the point where I had made endurance sports my higher power. Like this, I was using it to run away from other things, and I'd placed it above more important things in my life. And I'd lost sight of what was important. I needed to be right sized, you know, I had to have that reckoning. And as a result of that, like it really humbled me, and it changed my relationship with my sobriety and my sober community, because I was a guy at that point who could go to meetings and I had all the answers. And I was sort of like, oh, he's the guy, like you should talk to him, you know? And there's an ego piece to that, right? And that got deflated fast, right? All we have is today. And it really grounded me in that. And it's made me a better human as a result. And that's just another example of like a setback or an obstacle being a lever for growth.
If you're looking for a clean, sustainable energy boost without the jitters, Athletic Nicotine is for you. Athletic Nicotine offers the lowest dose, slow release, tobacco-free nicotine made right here in the USA, and it's free from microplastics. Whether you're an athlete, a biohacker, an artist, or someone who just loves getting into that flow state, this product is designed to gradually lift your energy, helping you stay focused and sharp without crashing. It's perfect for shifting your mindset and keeping you in the zone all day long. I use Athletic Nicotine before every podcast or whenever I have to be mentally focused. I throw one in right before the meeting or the podcast, and it's the perfect performance tool to sharpen your mind. If you're ready to level up your focus, head over to athleticnicotine.com/rideout to grab yours today. Again, that's athleticnicotine.com/rideout.
So with respect to the back surgery, like, yeah, I had chronic lower back pain for many years. I trained through it for the most part. It's called isthmic spondylolisthesis. It's something that, you know, a certain percentage of people are born with. It's a little fracture on the bone behind the vertebrae that kind of keeps the vertebrae together. And so one of my vertebrae, my L5, was slipped forward and down, and it was pinching these nerves. And just so I had tremendous sciatic pain and numbness in my foot, and was told many times that I needed surgery. But, you know, I live in LA, and so it's like, don't get surgery. Like, go see my guy, you know? And so I had to spend 10 years seeing everybody's guy and, you know, exploring every conceivable alternative modality of healing. And it's not that some of these things didn't provide some kind of temporary relief, but, you know, basically when I finally went to the neurosurgeons, they're like, dude, here's your MRI, here's your X-ray. Like, see how this bone is doing this? See the crack in that bone? He's like, I don't care what you're like, no amount of glute activation is going to move this bone back and like resolve that fracture. Like, I don't care. You can fucking you could inject peptides and stem cells right into there. Like, it is not going to do anything. Like, you have got to do this. And so
a shaman in Topanga couldn't fix it.
I saw lots of shamans. I did all the stuff, dude. Yeah. And so I'm 90 days out from it, and I'm glad I did it. I totally underestimated how intense it would be. It was a 6-hour surgery. They filleted me in the front, pulled my guts apart. So they went in and they scraped out the disc in between L5 and S1. and they inserted this cage and screwed it in. And inside that cage is bone grafting material that over time will grow that L5 and S1 together into one bone. And then they flipped me over and they sliced me open on the back and put 4 screws and 2 rods in there to like anchor it in place. Wow. Yeah. It's been tough. So I'm only allowed to walk. Just 3 days ago, they told me I didn't have to wear my back brace anymore. So I've been wearing a back brace all day. And the main thing is just how I'd never had a surgery before. And like, just, I've been wrecked. Like I can work half the day and then like by noon or 1, it's like, I got to go home and I got to get in bed, man. I'm like exhausted all the time. So I'm just emerging from that. And then, you know, I'll really start to be able to do stuff at 6 months. And it takes really a year for these bones to fuse together. So I'm benched. I know I don't have to tell you, like, you know, what that does to your mental health when you can't go out and exorcise your demons by, you know, running or doing these other things, physical things to manage your mental health and allow you to be able to sit down in a chair and have a conversation with someone. What do you do when all that gets stripped away? And with it, like your attachment to your identity. I'm this athlete. This is who I am. And so again, it's just, okay, what's the opportunity here? Mm-hmm. What's the lesson? What is the thing that I'm supposed to learn here? And I really think that what I need to learn, I know it is how to be okay with you. Like if you are stripped of that identity, like you're more than just like this person who does these things or whatever. And what does it feel like when you have to just sit down and you have to be in that discomfort and you can't just like go out and run away from whatever it is that's making you uncomfortable? Because that's always been my thing, whether it's like, oh, I'll just lose myself in work, or I'll just like, I got this workout or whatever it is, or I'm going to like say yes to this speaking thing so I can get on a plane and get out of Dodge and not have to like, you know, like whatever it is, like I will use anything, my phone, whatever. So now it's like, okay, never in your life have you like really invested in like just being present with yourself and trying to be okay and like love yourself just for existing, rather than make it this transactional thing where I only deserve this if I do this, or, you know, look how many people are paying attention to what I'm doing. Like when you detach from that, like it gets really uncomfortable, you know, and because I can't do that, it means that I can't, it's more difficult for me to be present moment to moment in my life. And then if you can't do that, like, are you really showing up for your wife and your kids to the best of your ability? Like, are you your best self? Like all of these things. And like, this has always been my challenge. So it's like another sobriety. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, you could have made this choice earlier, but like you weren't paying attention. So I'm just going to slam you. You know, we're going to like literally scalpel you open in order for you to like sit down and pay attention to what I'm trying to tell you. And it's like, okay, I'm here. That's the kind of exploration that I'm in right now. It's really difficult. Like I also being 58, yep. I can't run, you know, I have to really like be okay. It's like I look in the mirror and I'm like, well, that's not awesome. You know, and, that's a little saggy, dude, you know, like, cause you know, stuff starts to happen at this age. And instead of being like, well, I got to get in the gym immediately and rectify this, being like, what if it's okay? You know, this is where you're at right now. Can you be okay with that? You know,
I've found
it's rough.
I've found it very difficult getting older, and the changes you're talking about, like I've like emotionally struggled with it a lot. It's I don't know what I expected, that I would never age, but it's almost like just recently it just hit me over the head. Like, no, you're old. You're getting older. And it's like, I don't know if I just was ignoring the fact that might happen, but I haven't done a very good job of handling it. And in a lot of ways, I think almost the exercise has become a way to be like, no, I'm still very valid. Look at what I'm doing at this age. But it's like not the way forward.
You know, we all want to like hold on to that physique, and you know, hopefully, you know, when I have permission, I'm going to get right back on it. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I think the thing is, you know, I said earlier, like you can use running to run towards something, or you can use it to run away, and, you know, insert fitness or whatever your thing is. What happens is people have certain life challenges. They find their way to Ironman. Ironman changes their life. It's just like the greatest thing. It has taught them so much. It's improved their life. It's given them a community, and they love that community. And so many lessons are learned that you can translate into all these other areas of life. But at some point, you have to understand that's a way station and you've got to move on. And like, where are the other, like, okay, like if I could change in so many ways and do these things, like what else is out there that I need to learn? And I need to be courageous enough to not get stuck in this community or in this place, and have the courage to like sort of, okay, now I need to like not identify with that and figure out where the other, where my other blind spots are. You know what I mean? Because I think you see a lot of people, they have this remarkable experience because of this thing, but then they stay there. You know?
That's right.
It's like they identify themselves with that. And I'm not disparaging that or really judging it. If it's giving your life meaning, like go for it, and that's great. But I do think it ends up being an impediment to the growth that's otherwise available. So I think that, like, when I look at you, and I say this with love, and I'm not telling you what to do. Like, this is just an observation, but I think there are beautiful lessons available to you, Ken, if you have the courage to hold your relationship with like running and fitness and like your results and your performances a little bit loosely. Because I think by overly self-identifying with all of that, and you're kind of indulging in this like fear of other people's opinions, and they're like making judgments about who you are based upon your fastest marathon time and all. And even you, like the self-awareness, knowing like it's all bullshit, it doesn't matter. Like you're still like anchoring yourself there. Right. And I think there's all these beautiful gifts and experiences and challenges available to you. If you could just like, kind of just, I'm not saying walk away from it or stop doing it, but just like maybe stop holding on to it so tightly.
Yeah, no, that's great advice, and definitely something that I'm struggling with, but something that, like you said, I'm hyper aware of and have been working excessively hard recently to kind of let go of that and focus on some new stuff. Hence the podcast.
You're a baller. We all know it. You're fucking fast. You're always going to be faster than everyone else, or maybe you're not, who cares, or whatever. But the thing is, like, you're a beautiful guy, irrespective of any of that stuff.
You're too kind.
You know, and I don't hang out with you or want to be around with you because of your PRs.
That's fair enough. How has the podcast helped in your just journey of life? Like, because I ask because some of the conversations you've had have been so impactful and meaningful, not just on the audience, but on, like, in my case, the people that you've interviewed. It's given people a platform where they otherwise may not have had one. And how has that, like, whole thing played in? I noticed that you tend to go in themes where at times there's a lot of scientists, so then there's a lot of actors, and then there's a lot of athletes. And do you get caught in a rut of thinking, I want to have this one particular type of guest, or what's the process and how has it been helpful, or what have you learned from it?
The only way that I can continue to do this and remain enthusiastic about it is by, basing my decisions about who to have on the show purely on my curiosity.
Yeah.
Because everything else has diminishing returns at this point. And it's like, that's the only thing that, and if I'm not curious and excited to be talking to the person, then it's not going to be a good experience for the listener or the viewer anyway. Right. And I've been doing it for so long. And my curiosities are varied. And so it's not like, it's really about like, what do I need to learn? What gets me excited? What am I interested in? Who do I think has a unique personality or a set of experiences that I could learn from, and perhaps the audience could learn from? And I'm really trying to. I think there was a purity to podcasting for many years that is now, like, it's very different now.
Very much so.
And I'm of two minds of it. On the one hand, like, I could have never imagined that this medium would be as powerful and as mainstream as it has become, and that's just a remarkable thing. And I'm a beneficiary of that, and very privileged and grateful to be in the position that I'm in. But it's become this thing where, like, there's just millions of people making public access TV shows. You know what I mean? And in order to get people to notice and pay attention to what they're doing, there's a certain set of incentives to match up with an algorithm that favors a certain kind of guest and a certain kind of conversation. And in order to be competitive, like, you kind of have to program your show accordingly. And I'm a competitive person, and I want to be noticed and seen, as much as the next guy. And so those incentives are very tempting and intoxicating. And, I'd be lying if I didn't say, like, well, if I play this game, like, what does that look like? And I'm now emerging from a phase of experimentation with the show to realize that all I really want to do is kind of take it back to its original roots, why I wanted to do it in the first place, and stay true to that, which is to have these like long form, meaningful conversations that maybe meander at times and could be a little bit more focused, but are always heart-centered and authentic and hopefully honest and real. And sometimes that doesn't always match up with the appetite of what YouTube is looking for, or a particular algorithm. And I'm okay with that. You know what I mean? Because I want to be able to keep doing this. And I also want to be somebody, for people who have listened to the show or watched it, like, can feel that there is that integrity there, that I'm not like creating a crazy title and trying to trick people, or, induce some, dopamine cycle to manipulate people into like watching something that maybe they didn't even want to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'm just over it. You know what I mean? And the world is the way that it is. And like I really enjoy what I'm doing. And honestly, like I really do want to stay connected with the why. I think there's so much focus on like growth, how am I going to, getting new subscribers and all that kind of stuff that a lot of creators are losing sight of, like, why they're even doing this in the first place. And I'm pretty clear on the why, which is that I'm trying to like create a human connection that leads to something meaningful that will impact, at least one person in a not insignificant way.
It's so obvious that the level of preparation and interest is there, and it's one of the things I appreciate the most. Do you feel, if you have someone coming on who's very technically savvy, like a scientist, for instance, in a specific area, do you feel like pressure or anxiety about being prepared for the interview, and how much like research goes into preparing?
The anxiety isn't a negative anxiety. It's sort of like the anxiety that you have when you're preparing for a race, like when you've, prepared hard to do well. And I take the preparation seriously, and I don't take the guest's appearance for granted, nor do I take the attention of the audience for granted. Like, there's zillions of options out there, right? And so, I think out of respect to the guest and out of respect to the audience, you owe it to yourself to show up ready to go. And so, I'm not neurotic about it, but like, I'm always prepared. And I would say, to a fault, at sometimes I've learned and discovered that there's diminishing returns at being too prepared. Because if you're so prepared, you already know every story, you know the answer to every question, and it's easier to kind of tune out and not be present or be bored. And that creates a flat, or to like assume that the audience already knows this because like you read it, and then you forget that like they don't, or whatever. And it makes for a less dynamic experience when you can leave a little bit of mystery out there, so that when somebody says, oh my God, what? Like, tell me that, I didn't know that, and then it takes on an energy of itself. And I think over preparation is just insecurity, like masked. Like if you're so neurotic, like you'll over prepare because you're so afraid that you might look like an idiot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then it's like taking your ego out of it, and not like, oh, I'm here to be smart and show the guest how smart I am and how well I prepared.
Exactly.
Like you look good by making the guests look good. And you have to like, make yourself subservient to that and get out of the way. Like, you're in service to the audience, and you're providing a public service, and you do that by serving the guest and making them look awesome, like teeing them up so that they look great.
You're certainly the master at it. And I just want to say in closing, how much I appreciate your friendship. You've been an incredible mentor and an incredible advocate. And like I said, you connected me with Bird Level at UTA, who got my book published at Simon & Schuster, which is just beyond my wildest imagination that this could have ever happened. That's not a humble brag, that's sincerity. I'm just like, I can't believe that there was interest to publish this story, and I'm just incredibly appreciative of everything you've done and continue to do. So thank you again for doing this, and I love you, I appreciate you, and I look forward to continuing our beautiful friendship. And
I love you, Ken. That was awesome. I appreciate it, and I'm excited for this podcast journey that you've been on, and the book coming out, and all the exciting stuff. Man, you deserve it. You worked hard for it, and you're a beautiful man.
thank you, brother.
Can I leave the audience with one last thought?
I'd be disappointed if you didn't.
Because I'm thinking, like, because here's my insecurity, right? It's like, oh, this is about, like you told me ahead of time, like, this is about, like, you know, we're talking to the person who's stuck, and you know, kind of sharing experience, strength, and hope around, like, how you emerge out of that. And I think it would be remiss if we didn't end this with some parting words about what that experience is like, and maybe a way to frame it. Because as we talked about earlier, like, when you're in it, like, you can't see your way out. It's very confusing. And you think that at some point there's going to be this road that's just going to appear, and it's all going to be clear. And, like, this is where you need to head, and you can see, you know, what's on the other side of, you know, the next way station or whatever. And it just doesn't work that way. So if you're stuck, or you feel like, you can't see a way out of your situation, or you're just on the verge of, like, throwing in the towel on whatever dream or ambition that you had, like, don't quit before the miracle, because you're not supposed to know all these things. You know, like, it's rigged this way. Like, you don't get to know. You know, it's like, yeah, but, like, can you just tell me a little bit about how this is going to turn out? It's like, no, you don't get that. All you get to do is take that next step. You know, do the next thing that's right in front of you to do, even if it's, like, the tiniest, stupidest thing ever. Because the only way that path will continue to unfold in front of you is if you are willing to, like, take that step, and then one brick gets put in front of you, and, like, then tomorrow you'll know, like, what that one thing is that you can do. And that's the only way. It's like you're walking around with blinders, and you've really got to connect with your intuition and get clear on the things that you can control and can't control, and realize that all you really have domain over are your actions, your behaviors, how you're responding to the world around you, and comport yourself accordingly. Try to be true to yourself, and you know, honor yourself by taking those little steps every single day. Because when you look at someone like Ken's life, or, you know, choose whoever you look up to, it just looks like these people took huge swings and it worked out, and they're like giant leaps and all this kind of stuff. But it's not like that. It's drudgery, man. It's like stumbling around in the dark, doing, like, that tiny little thing that no one's going to notice, but you just did it a bazillion times over and over and over again. And that's the truth about how you emerge out of a dark place and build a life and discover meaning and purpose and fulfillment and happiness and all of these things that we want and so desperately desire, but, you know, feel like are out of reach. It's really in the little things that you're doing every single day. So don't lose hope and stay in it. And the fact that you tuned in to listen to this or watch this is a demonstration that you have enough self-belief to, like, at least get through the next day.
Thank you again, Rich,
Awesome,
for doing
Thanks,
this.
buddy.
You're the best.
Yeah.
All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. Please take a quick minute to subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening. This is a new show, so subscribing makes a huge difference. Please also take a minute to give it a review and leave a comment on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. You can also subscribe and leave a comment on YouTube. Again, this is really important for us, especially now since we're just getting started. Please also check out all of our sponsors. They make the show possible, and honestly, I love and use every single product we talk about on the show. You can learn more about me, this podcast, and also find links to purchase my upcoming memoir at theothersideofhard.com. My new book is called Everything You Want Is on the Other Side of Hard, and it comes out March 10th, available everywhere you buy books. Or again, go into theothersideofhard.com. There's multiple links there where you can find all the retailers carrying the book. Thanks a lot for being with us, and we'll see you next week.